it's Jessica from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with the second half of my December wrap-up. I already wrapped up the first few books I read in the month. I think I read like 8 or 9. I did read 14 books in the second half of the month. I had a really great reading month. I got through so much of my physical TBR, which makes me super excited. I think having a TBR cart that I put together in every single reset video I do now is very nice and very helpful, but I do have a couple book clubs. I did a read-along and I did a couple of vlogs, so I'll go ahead and link all of that down below and get to the 14 books I read in the second half of the month. The first book was a reread, and that is Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood. This, like I said, is a reread. This is the third time I read it. I did read, highlight, and annotate. I have an entire reading vlog for this. I love this book. I love the series. It's an absolute 5-star read. This time I didn't like bawl my eyes out like I did the first 2 times, but I definitely teared up during certain scenes, and it's so interesting reading this book after having read book 2. The previous 2 times I read this were before I even read book 2. I read it right when it came out, and then I read it right before I read book 2. So now I know things, and it's very interesting the things I picked up on this time around. This is an urban fantasy. We have Bryce. She is trying to uncover the mystery of the murder of her best friend, so she has to team up with Hunt. Hunt is basically helping her figure all this out and kind of becomes her bodyguard, and he is a fallen angel because he was part of the traitors of this whole war that happened a long time ago. It's very hard to explain, but the romance is like one of my absolute favorites. I love Hunt so much. I love Sarah J. Maas. I love the series. Cannot wait for the next book. We are doing a read along, so we had a live show, and now we will be reading book 2 this month, but highly recommend this series if you haven't yet. And it was just so much fun highlighting and tabbing and just loving my favorite characters. Then I did get an arc of The Season of Secrets by QB Tyler. This one, I think I gave 4.5 stars. I did like this better than The Worst Kept Secret. This one is actually the sister of the one, so it's the daughter slash sister. So in The Worst Kept Secret, she falls for her best friend's dad, and she is part of that family. So this is the character that we know she was dating an older man in that book. This is her story, and it is an office romance, and it's forbidden. It's age gap. The hero's been infatuated with her since he literally hired her, and it is the office party, and she's like, you know what? I want to make my move. So she asks if she can go home with him. He's like, fine, I'm not going to resist you anymore, and she goes home with him, and they have to keep it a secret, and then he's got to be worried about HR, and she's got to be worried about like her family, and we know what happens with them. We know they end up together because we see them in the previous book, but I really like this spinoff. It was a novella. It's definitely really spicy, really good, and it's technically a Christmas novella, but it just takes place during Christmas time. I feel like there's not like too much Christmas in here, so I had a lot of fun, rated at 4.5 stars. Then I finally got back into the, what is this called? The St. View Prison series. So I listened to the first one, I think the entirety of it on a drive I was taking. I don't remember if it was an Apolycon I went to. It was a while ago. My library only had book 1, and this is by L. Thorpe, and I know I got the recommendation from Lacey Book Lovers, and I never continued the series. It's Why Choose. It's she was hooking up with her sister's ex, and he was like over the sister, like it was fine, but he then woke up the next morning in her sister's bed covered in her blood, and her sister was murdered, and so he was put in jail, and she is like, he didn't do it, so she ends up getting a job in the jail and having a lawyer, and it's a Why Choose romance between the lawyer, a guard in the prison, and the hero who's in prison, and her. So the first one ends on a huge cliffhanger. There's lots of suspense in here too, which I really love, like such an action-packed plot, because he's in prison and she's working in this prison and there's dangerous things that are happening, and so I really liked the first book, but books 2 and 3, so good. 2 was my favorite. It was action-packed. All of the romances really developed really well. I feel like the first one we really only got a lot of development with her and the lawyer, but this one was great, and we also have 2 of the heroes that are together as well, so I loved watching their relationships. So I did read Solitary Sinners, and then I read Fatal Felons, and I listened to these like literally both in one day. I could not stop listening to them. I was obsessed. So I gave book 2 5 stars, and I think I'm giving book 3 maybe 4.5. It wasn't my favorite as book 2 was. Some of the plot did slow down a little bit, but it was so addicting and entertaining, and I was like, how are they even gonna get out of the situation? And then you had to figure out who really killed her sister, because you know it's not one of the heroes, so that was a little bit intense. But overall, really love the series. Highly recommend checking it out. And pretty much the entirety of Christmas Day, I read Big Nick Energy by Morgan Elizabeth. This is actually a spin-off of Tis the Season for Revenge. I think this is in the same series. It did have the series number on the spines before, but I think it's number 4 in the series. This we read for Ravished by Romance, which is my book club with Lacey, and it was a lot of fun. This one is a solid 4-star read. This one is a lot sweeter than Tis the Season for Revenge. This one, it's okay. It's a funny setup because she's a single mom, and we saw her in Tis the Season for Revenge, and her husband was abusive. He was horrible. She has a restraining order. He can't see them. And she goes on a dating apps, and she goes on a date with a guy that's a lot younger than her, and he is like, this isn't gonna work out, but I really like you. Let me hang out with you. Let me hang out with your daughters. Like, let's just be friends. So they are friends. And he's like, why don't you come home to my dad's Christmas tree farm ranch for Thanksgiving and you can meet my dad. And that is her love interest, is his father. And she had gone on a date with the son. And she brings her daughters, who are definitely still very traumatized over what happened and dealing with it in different ways. And she's trying to just support them the way she can. And one of the daughters wants a horse. She's obsessed with horses, and he has them there. And I think he has cats too. And one of them really wants a cat, and he makes the mistake of bringing up Elf on the Shelf. And they are like, what is that? And so the mom is irate. She's like, I don't have time for this. I'm an exhausted single mom who's working all the time. I don't have time or the money for an Elf on the Shelf. He shows up with an Elf on the Shelf to her house, which is an hour away from where he lives, and he says he's gonna set it up every single night for her daughters. And so he does that, and they start spending more time together, and it's just very, very sweet. I mean, there's like a little bit of rope play in here, like there's rope here, and it says it on the back too, so it was like big in the marketing. There's a little bit of rope play, it's a little bit spicy, but it's just a very sweet romance. He is just so in love with her and wants to go all in with her, and she's very hesitant because she did get out of a relationship and she wants to be just independent for once. But I had a lot of fun reading this. Solid 4-star read. Check it out if you want a really cute holiday romance. I skipped an entire row of books I read. We're gonna backtrack a little bit. I actually got through a lot of my physical TBR. So first book that I listened to from that TBR is The Reef by Nora Roberts. I am trying to read 12 books by her in 2024. If you're interested in joining that, I am doing a read along with my patrons. We're picking out a book a month and reading it together and having a live show together. So check out my Patreon. It's always linked down below. You can have a free 7-day trial if you want to check it out. But The Reef is one I was very intrigued by because it had archaeology in it. It was marine archaeology, and when I was like in 4th grade for like a hot second, wanted to be a marine biologist because of like how cool it is to go down and like look at shipwrecks and stuff. So this had my name written all over it. I love that stuff. And so this one was written in the 90s, and we had a very 90s hero. He was very domineering and very much like, I want this woman, I'm gonna take this woman kind of thing. And so I wasn't the biggest fan of the romance, okay? But I loved the suspense. So I listened to this on audio, which I feel like is good because some of hers do have a very slow pace, and that's what happened with the other one I read this month, and I didn't end up loving it. But this one, listening to it on audio helped me get through it a lot quicker, and I didn't really feel that slow pace, and was obsessed with the suspense at the end because the hero's father was killed over this artifact when he was younger, and now he's like obsessed with finding it, and she is trying to help him find it because they ended up teaming up because they were looking for the same thing near each other, and she's like working with her parents. It's all this thing. And we do have a time jump because things happen, and he like really pushes her away, and now they're back together and they're still trying to find this artifact, and someone is wanting to find it too. So it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Like I said, the romance was not my favorite, but I feel like in Nora's books, I either really love the suspense or really love the romance. I rarely really love both. That's what happened in Black Hills though, which is why they got 5 stars. Usually one of them outweighs the other for me, and this one the suspense did. I was very entertained, and like I loved listening to the end. So solid 4-star read. I'm very happy I read this one and that it ended up being as good as I thought it would be. And I did a 24-hour reading vlog where I read, I think 3 or 4 books in the day, and the first one was Insul Love by Danielle Allen. I was very excited to read this. It's a dating reality show where you are actually like paired up with your fiance in the beginning and have to live together and then compete and then get married at the end to get all the money. And so the heroine drunkenly submits herself to it, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. It was just very domestic. They moved in together, they lived together, they did some challenges, but they were like let's play a Q&A, like who knows each other better, or let's bake a cake. And so I thought it would be a lot more entertaining, and at least like with like The Bachelor and like reality shows and like Love is Blind, it's very messy and very entertaining. This didn't really have that. It was just like they're just learning about each other and getting along and becoming friends. So it was very, very, very low angst, which is not always my favorite. So I gave it 3.5 stars, and it was just all right. I would have liked a little bit more conflict and a little bit more excitement, like especially in the challenges and stuff. So it just felt like I was reading along. So 3.5 stars for me. I think I had higher expectations, and I would have just loved a little bit more. Then I listened to the audiobook of Do Your Worst by Rosie Danon. I love this cover so much, and this one also has to do with archaeology. So the hero's an archaeologist, and he is hired to go to this estate to figure out, I forget even why he's there. I know why she's there, because she is a curse breaker. So he does have like a bad past that he's trying to overcome with his reputation, but she's a curse breaker. So she has been taken to this estate to figure out like what is wrong with it, and he is there to, I think he's trying to find artifacts too, and they think it's cursed because no one can really find anything, and the moment she arrives, like she instantly finds something. So she is like legitimately a curse breaker in here. Like magic exists in this book, and they had actually met in the pub the night before she shows up to work and really hit it off. They kissed each other. They like really like each other, but then he figures out that she's a curse breaker, and he's like, you're a hoax, like you're not serious, this is ridiculous, and he really doesn't like her. So it turns very quickly into hate to love, and he's trying to like throw her off and like have her prove that she's really not a serious curse breaker. And they both do have a lot of not drama, but just like baggage when it comes to their past as well, that they do open up to each other about. It's a really, really, really fun book, and I loved the connection that they ended up having. And yeah, I don't know why this has so many bad reviews. Like, I thought their relationship was so fun, and how it went from like lust to hate to lust to love. Like, it was a lot of fun, and I loved the setting. I loved them trying to find different artifacts and her trying to break this curse and discovering like the root of the curse. 4.5 stars. I think more like 4, but like 4.5 stars. I had a lot of fun. Then I ended up finally picking up Caught Up by Liz Tomford. This one is the single dad nanny romance, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. So more that I think about it, more on the 4-star, because I read this in a day, so I could really feel some lagging when there was lagging. I feel like the last 100 pages were predictable and slow, and I was annoyed that the plot played out very predictably. So she is a chef, a pastry chef. She's like very well known, and her father's actually one of the coaches of the baseball team, so I didn't know it was a coach's daughter romance, but she's really in a funk where she feels like she cannot bake anything or create anything. So she takes summer off. She has a huge line of clients for when she comes back, but she takes the summer off, and she decides to work for the baseball team and be Kai's son's nanny so that he can bring his son along to games, and she can also be like around her dad all summer. And her dad had given up his entire career for her, and so he was going to be like a famous baseball player, but because of stuff that happened, he had to quit and take care of her, and he was really dedicated to her. So she has that burden on her shoulders that she, like, her dad gave up so much for her. And Kai is in this position where he's like, I want to give up everything for my son to make sure he has a good life. And he's like a baby. And they hire her. He's like very reluctant, and she is very stubborn, and they communicate so well. I really liked their dynamic. I really loved how much they talked to each other and how she wouldn't let him like hide or like not communicate with her. But obviously there was like an end point to the relationship because she was going to go back to her job, and I just feel like that was really, really drawn out at the end. So I didn't love that. So I honestly think this might be my least favorite in the series, but it was still a 4.5 star read. Like, it was still really, really, really good, but I just went in with really high expectations because everybody loves this book, but it was good. It was a really good read, but not like my next favorite thing. And then I ended up picking up Done and Dusted, and this one just felt like your average run-of-the-mill small town romance. Cowboy romance, ranch romance. I do appreciate, so she has PTSD because she was injured. She rides for a living. Like, I don't remember if I think it's horses. And she competes, and she gets thrown and injured, and now she can't really get back on the horse. And so she comes back to her small town, and it's her romance with her brother's best friend who owns the bar in town. And I went into this one also with high expectations. This got picked up by a publisher. It like blew up when it first came out. I do love the cover, but it was fine. It's like, it was going along, it's brother's best friend, they're hiding their romance, they're going around on the ranch, like nothing truly like unique and exciting happened in this book. So it was just alright. Like, I expected to be blown away. I expected it to be like so just endearing and me like giggling and loving the romance, and it was just fine. Like, nothing super exciting, so I gave it 3.5 stars. Rounding up to 4, but overall, it's just like, it's a normal small town romance. Like, nothing super special about this. So then I read the 3 books I've already talked about, and then this took me months to read. So I read Shelter in Place by Nora Roberts. I actually did do a vlog of this in the Reef for my Patreon, so check that out if you're interested. But this one took me, I started it in October. Finally finished it. I was very excited for this one. This one was super hyped to me, and a lot of people told me I would love it. It does start out really, really good. So the suspense is the fact that they survive a mass shooting at a mall. So the heroine is in the bathroom when it happens. She's one of the first people to call first responders. The hero works at a restaurant there, and he saved a lot of people during this. And so he, because of that, becomes a police officer, and he actually becomes partners with one of the first police officers on the scene at the mall shooting, and the heroine becomes an artist. And we go through their lives after the shooting, and then we figure out that the guys who did the shooting were not the ones who planned it. The one who planned it is actually the one now, years later, picking off survivors because they're mad. And so the hero, the police officer, has noticed a pattern in people dying from the shooting. So he is concerned and starts like putting pieces together, and then he ends up moving to the island that the heroine's aunt lives on. I think it's her aunt, unless it's her grandma. I don't remember. But they end up being connected, and then they fall in love. And so this is very, very slow. Very, 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 very slow. We don't get a lot of the serial killer like picking people off. We just like get a brief description of it, and we just get them like going about their lives. And the big standoff at the end where they confront the serial killer was over in like a page. And I was like, you built this entire book up. This serial killer starts taunting the police officer and sending him threats and all these things, and like it's so building up so much to this final like big standoff between them, and it's over in a page. And I was very disappointed by that. This one just really had a hard time keeping my interest because it was very, very, very slow, and the romance was very Insul Love, so I wasn't even swooning super a lot over that either. So 3 stars for this one. I really wanted to love it, but not my favorite from Nora. Okay. So then I read Among the Heather by Samantha Young. I did get an ALC of this and did not get around to it when it was released. So I finally decided to listen to the audiobook, and I gave this one 4 stars. So this one I didn't love as much as the first one. This one's actually the person who owns the estate in Scotland where it's for celebrities really to like hide out in. So the first book was between a bodyguard there and a maid there. This one, she owns it, and it's with one of the actors that's hiding out there. So he had something come up from his past, and it involves like the murder of someone, and so he is horrified, and like everybody hates him, and so he's hiding out here. And they really butt heads in the beginning because she has a famous father who's an actor, director, and she's had a lot of actor boyfriends use her to get to her father. She's also plus size, and she's had them say really, really mean things about her. So she is very self-conscious about her body and about sex with people and showing her body and being aware of that, and she will never trust an actor again because she's had a lot of them cheat on her, and he's an actor, and so they end up starting to really like each other. But she has a lot of hang-ups about dating him, and he wants to show her that she's super beautiful and he really likes her, and he also is getting threatening messages, and she is getting threatening messages. So there's a little bit of suspense in here. It was a really sweet romance. I love the setting. I love the audiobook, so I gave this one 4 stars. Like I said, not as good as book 1 because book 1 was just so good, but I did really enjoy it, and I'm very excited for the next book in the series. Then New Year's Eve, I finished 2 books I was in the middle of. I'm actually doing a fantasy reading vlog, so this will be in there, but I have The Ever King by LJ Andrews. My sister actually gifted this to me for Christmas. We are starting a new tradition where we're giving each other a book Christmas Eve and spending the next few days reading it, and so I gave her One Dark Window by Rachel Gillick. I haven't read it yet, but I've heard really good things, and she only reads fantasy romance, and she enjoyed it. This one she loved, and I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. I had very high expectations going to this one. A lot of people messaged me when I said I was reading it saying they loved it. It has really high ratings. This one, the hero and heroine had met when they were young, and now he kidnaps her in retaliation of her father, and he is the Ever King. He's this like king of the seas. He's got powers. His blood is toxic and he can give it to you and you start dying, but he can sing and bring you back to life. She also has some powers and he kidnaps her though, so they're on the seas a lot. I expected a lot more action and adventure in here, honestly. I felt like a lot of it was skipped over. Like, we had a big battle scene where he was taking down like pretty much a pirate, and it was from her perspective, and she was in like the basement of the ship. And I'm like, where is our big battle? And then we had another scene where he literally was like unaliving someone for touching her, and she just like summarized what happened from her perspective. And I'm like, give us this action, please. Like, actually show us instead of telling us what happened. So I was a little annoyed with that. I also felt like it was pretty Insul Love. I didn't really believe this connection they had because it was already there because of when they were kids. I wanted to feel that a little bit more authentically in the story. So I'm very intrigued though by the end. I will probably pick up the next one. Like I said, I gave this 3.5 stars. I don't know yet if I want to round down or round up, but the ending was really good. I really liked what happened and what the hero decided to do. And it's very much touch her and you die, like soulmates kind of romance. So I'm intrigued enough to pick up the next one, but the hype got to me and made my expectations a little too high. And the last one I read is The Shake Off by Lulu Moore. This one is book 2 in this series, and it is a picture romance, and he ends up having a one-night stand with the heroine, and she leaves in the morning, and he's like, I didn't hear from you. Like, why did you leave? First of all, she's like, I couldn't wake you up. You wouldn't wake up, and I had to go to work. And it wasn't that great. And so he is like, are you kidding me? Like, what do you mean it wasn't that great? I had an awesome time. She's like, well, you did, but like I was left hanging. And he is like, no way. And so she's like, yeah, really? Like, you're not that great in bed. And so he then gets what they call the yips, where he cannot pitch anymore. Like, he cannot throw a strike to save his life. He cannot get the speed that he just can get. And so he tanks the opening game. And he goes to her door and he's like, you need to show me how to be better at sex so then I can get better at pitching, because he's like, this is all in my head. I just can't stop thinking about like everybody I've ever slept with and if it was even good or not. And now he's asking her to help him. And she is in a position where she can get his help to impress her boss and get her a promotion. So she's like, fine. You help me, I help you. And so they start sleeping together. And it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of baseball in here. She's actually really good friends with the owner of the team. And so we get to see a lot of her friends. And we do get to see the couple from book 1 because Jupiter is still on the team. And I had a lot of fun with this. I didn't love it as much as book 1 because book 1 is like such an angsty romance. And the third act breakup was like a little annoying, but like you knew what was going to come because you knew she had a lot of hangups. Her parents are divorced. They are horrible to each other and put her in the middle of it. And she's like, I just don't want to like love anybody. And so one of our friends was really mean, but overall I had a lot of fun reading this. So I gave it 4 stars, a very solid sports romance. Just know I love book 1 better. And those are all the books that I read in the second half of December. Let me know if you've read any of these and what your thoughts are and what you've read recently. I would love to hear, and that's all I have. As always, thank you so much for watching and have a good day. Bye.